Why I believe the Democratic Party is no friend to minorities. For decades, the Democratic Party has presented itself as the champion of minority communities, promising justice, equality, and economic opportunities. However, when we examine the policies they've enacted, especially the 1994 crime bill, it becomes clear that these promises often do more harm than good. Joe Biden helped craft that bill, and Bill Clinton signed it into law, leading to skyrocketing incarceration rates that disproportionately affected Black and Latino communities. Despite this, many still argue that Biden was the lesser of two evils in 2020, and Clinton was once jokingly called the first Black president. To me, both narratives are not just misguided, they are insulting. Before anyone assumes this means I think Republicans are a better option, let me be clear. I don't. The left wing and right wing of American politics are simply two sides of the same coin, serving a system that benefits the powerful while leaving everyday Americans behind. The Republican Party has done its share of damage to minority communities, often through economic policies that favor corporations and the wealthy. But the Democratic Party's brand of liberalism has been equally harmful, implementing policies that claim to help minorities while keeping them dependent and struggling. The 1994 Crime Bill, a well-intentioned disaster. The 1994 Crime Bill is one of the clearest examples of how Democratic policies have hurt minorities. It expanded mandatory minimum sentences, increased police funding, and built more prisons, all of which led to the over-incarceration of Black and brown people. While violent crime was a serious issue in the early 1990s, and even some Black community leaders initially supported the bill, its long-term consequences were devastating. Rather than addressing root causes of crime, such as poverty and lack of opportunity, the bill took a punitive approach that fueled mass incarceration and destroyed families. To make matters worse, Joe Biden has defended aspects of the bill well into recent years, and Bill Clinton only expressed regret once it became politically necessary. Yet, despite these failures, Democrats still expect unwavering support from minority voters, as if their past mistakes should simply be forgotten. The insult of calling Clinton the first Black president. One of the most absurd things I've ever heard is the claim that Bill Clinton was the first Black president. This phrase was popularized because Clinton played the saxophone, appeared comfortable around Black culture, and had personal scandals that some compared to struggles within the Black community. But none of this changes the fact that his policies, including welfare reform and the crime bill, did real harm. Clinton's 1996 Welfare Reform Act placed strict limitations on government assistance, making it harder for poor families, many of them Black, to receive aid. At the same time, his administration's tough on crime stance reinforced the very systems that kept Black men disproportionately locked up. So when people joke about Clinton being Black, I don't find it funny. True allyship is about policies that uplift communities, not cultural appropriation or empty gestures. How liberalism hurts America. Liberalism today markets itself as the cure for societal problems, but in reality, it often creates new ones while ignoring the old. Instead of empowering minorities through economic growth and education, it promotes government dependency, where people are given just enough to survive, but never enough to truly succeed. Instead of true criminal justice reform, we get policies that weaken law enforcement without offering real alternatives for community safety. Instead of strong schools that demand excellence, we get an education system that lowers standards in the name of equity, leaving students unprepared for the real world. Liberal policies also push a divisive form of identity politics that pits groups against each other rather than finding common ground. Rather than focusing on policies that benefit all struggling Americans, these approaches create a culture of victimhood and resentment. This doesn't uplift communities. It keeps them distracted while real issues like economic mobility and public safety go unaddressed. The illusion of choice. Every election cycle, we're told that we have to choose between Democrats and Republicans. But in reality, both parties serve the same system, one that prioritizes corporations, the wealthy, and maintaining the status quo. The Democratic Party claims to be the party of the people, yet time and time again, their policies reinforce cycles of poverty and incarceration. The Republican Party, on the other hand, often ignores minority issues altogether, like prioritizing big business and deregulation. Neither side truly serves working class Americans. It's time we recognize that voting for the lesser of two evils is still voting for evil. The sooner we break free from this two-party trap, the sooner we can start demanding real change. Electing more independents and third-party candidates could be a step toward real solutions, rather than empty promises. The failure of liberalism in education. Lowered standards and increased disparities. Education is supposed to be the great equalizer, but instead, it has become another system where liberal policies, though well-intentioned, are doing more harm than good, particularly for minority students. Just as in politics, where the Democratic Party claims to champion minorities while enacting harmful policies, the education system is following a similar pattern. By relaxing standards under the guise of social justice, we are failing the very students we claim to be protecting. The problem with IEPs, 504 plans, and equity-based policies. Special education programs, such as individualized education programs, IEPs, and 504 plans, were designed to support students with disabilities. However, in many cases, these programs have become a way to lower expectations for minority students, particularly Black boys. Instead of addressing systemic issues like poor instruction, underfunded schools, and lack of parental involvement, many students are placed into special education categories that remove academic rigor rather than provide meaningful support. Similarly, the push for equity in education has led to relaxed disciplinary policies. In the name of social justice, many schools have reduced suspensions and consequences for disruptive behavior. While this was meant to address racial disparities in school discipline, it has created environments where teachers have little authority and students who want to learn are often held back by classroom disruptions. The lie that all kids eventually catch up. One of the most dangerous ideas in modern education is the belief that all students will eventually catch up if we just give them enough time. This mindset has led to policies that lower the bar rather than push struggling students to improve. The result? Grade inflation, declining literacy rates, and students being passed through the system without mastering basic skills. Rather than confronting the achievement gap head-on, some schools have taken the approach of eliminating standardized testing, reducing homework, and even scrapping advanced placement programs, all in the name of equity. But instead of helping struggling students rise to the challenge, these policies only ensure that fewer students achieve excellence. The students who are most hurt by this are the very ones these policies claim to help. How liberalism is hurting minority students. Modern liberal education policies prioritize self-esteem over achievement, feelings over facts, and victimhood over personal responsibility. By constantly shifting blame to systemic oppression rather than focusing on solutions, these policies send a dangerous message to minority students that they are not capable of meeting the same expectations as their peers. This is not progress. It is a new form of discrimination wrapped in the language of compassion. Instead of setting students up for success, we are creating a generation of young people who are unprepared for the workforce and higher education. Employers and colleges will not lower their expectations simply because public schools did. Minority students are being sold an illusion of progress while being denied the tools they need to truly compete. Conclusion. Just as in politics, where minorities are expected to support Democrats despite decades of failed policies, the education system is using liberal ideology to justify changes that are making things worse. Relaxing academic standards, excusing bad behavior, and eliminating merit-based achievement in the name of equity does not close the achievement gap. It widens it. If we truly care about minority students, we should demand higher standards, greater accountability, and an education system that prepares them for success, not one that simply moves them through the system to protect an illusion of progress.